It's a Monday edition of Running Points on ysnlive.com. Ron Potesta with you. Let's go to the phone lines and we welcome in our hockey guru, Tom Callahan, and let's talk some pucks with Mr. Callahan on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning hotline. Mr. Callahan, what's up, my brother?
What's going on, Ron? It is wall-to-wall action right now if you're a hockey fan, and it's just absolutely insane trying to keep up, but it's fun.
Hey, I heard your talking puck on Twitch last night, and you brought up something that, first and foremost, out of the chute, we have been talking a little bit about this, the chicanery going on with the other three major sports in the United States and Canada. That would be the National Football League, the National Basketball Association, and Major League Baseball. Seems like the inmates have run the asylum and they're allowed to do whatever they want to do, where the NHL is basically buttoned up in terms of the national anthem and how everyone is going to approach the national anthem. Is that going to pay dividends long term in terms of fans looking at the product? Because it seems to me that if there was any time for the National Hockey League to indoctrinate people into the craziness of hockey, it would be this time of year, because the postseason is the best version of hockey.
It is, and it's the most intense. And Ron, this is what we often say around the sport: is if you can get anyone to tune into a playoff hockey game, especially if it's a Game 7, or in this case, if we get to it a Game 5, because this year's a little different. But that elimination game, there's nothing like it. And you know, it's interesting to me. I personally believe that most sports fans have pretty short memories, good or bad. You can hate a player for one day and love them the next, hate a team one day, love it the next, or an entire sport. And I know you and I are both baseball guys, and a lot of your listeners probably are too, and so I often use baseball as an example. After the strike in '94, I said, that's it, I'm done with baseball. Too much greed, too much this, too much that, and I'm not coming back. And I stayed away until the home run chase. And then that storyline kind of brought me back, for better or worse. And I've always loved baseball as a game, but, I was mad at it for a while. But I came back, and eventually, I was able to forgive that. So I think, honestly, I mean, you're right, especially in the NBA and Major League Baseball right now. And gosh, baseball with all the craziness going on with the virus. Baseball is like the most slipshod thing in the world, and it really annoys me, the way they're running things. But, once things get back to normal, we'll probably forget our anger. We'll lay that down and say, okay, well, we're back. But yeah, if you can get hockey fans for whatever reason to come over right now and take a look at and see what hockey is a very clean cut and orderly sport personality-wise for the most part. So I think that may appeal to some people looking for something like that. And also from, it can be fairly conservative in its behavior and in its nature. So, maybe this is the right time for people to be exposed to the product and become fans of it. I hope so. I just want to grow the game.
We had sat back and speculated that of the four major sports going through the world in which we now know, at least for the time being, that the National Hockey League has an opportunity to grow more than any other game because of the unfamiliarity of hockey to the casual sports fan. Add on to what the casual sports fan saw and obviously did not like, according to the ratings of the NBA and Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League is now becoming a alternative, and with the games that are on television, and I will say this, the games are not really missing a beat in terms of the production and in terms of the quality of the broadcast, because very rarely do you see the fans per se. You're more hearing the fans than you're seeing the fans, unless a goal is scored. Then you see the crowd going nuts because the director will have a pan shot of the crowd going nuts. hockey, the production of the game really hasn't lost that much except for the crowd noise.
No, and you have to compliment the NHL for the job they've done. I think they have done an excellent job of filling in the gaps with the production. And Ron, me as a trained play-by-play guy, and yourself obviously as well, I mean, I can notice once or twice a game where there's something that I know the reason that either the call went the way it did or the description is the way it is because it's off a monitor and not live in the building. You could tell the difference between the guys who are there and the guys who aren't. But that said, for the most part, I think it's been excellent. And I think the NHL really put a lot of thought and a lot of care into the production value of the games they're showing, which is great because it highlights, as we've already said, what is at this time of year, meaning playoff time, a fantastic product. And let's face it, people who have been dying for sports for a while, who have just been waiting for something, anything to come back, maybe they're trying the full menu right now. Maybe they're looking at all of their options and seeing a little NBA, a little MLB, and maybe some NHL.
What I will say for the NHL, and I think the biggest compliment for the NHL is thank God they put their games in the bubble in Canada. I think Toronto and Edmonton were the two of the best choices that the National Hockey League could have made. And under the circumstances, the fact that Canada has taken control of COVID and they're in a much better situation than the United States is in, and the fact that they have put this bubble together that the players seem to have a lot of respect and are following their P's and Q's within the bubble. It's a home run for the National Hockey League. Look, as much as we want to, as Americans, say, hey, the National Hockey League, this is a great sport, Canadians are tenfold better fans than the American people because that's their sport. I mean, hockey is Canada, and for the National Hockey League to recognize and understand we have to put these games in Canada, I think it's been a home run for the National Hockey League. Well done for the city of Toronto and the city of Edmonton to this point, and hopefully the P's and Q's are minded by the players so the bubble stays intact.
Well, it looks like they have so far, Ron, and as you point out, I mean, they really have. The hockey players have been respectful of it. I don't know if you could argue that same thing for the NBA. And baseball, we talked about it. The minute they said they were going to travel, we knew that was going to be an issue, but here we are. So, I'm pleased with the selection of the spots. I know there are probably some people who said, well, it should be in the United States, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to you or I as a fan because we can't go anyway. So, I understand there's a little bit of, I guess, pride or hubris in wanting it in your city and or nation, but I think they've done a great job locking it down, and the players are respecting it. And you know what? The most important thing, and it's funny because down here, people are talking, well, if you want college football, if you want pro football, put on a mask. If you want sports back, it's like, well, the NHL, they've sealed their bubble, and they are taking control of things inside of it, and they're doing what they need to do, and that's exactly what I think sports need to do to make it happen. And yeah, credit the NHL for the way they've done it, and you know what, they're providing us with a great product. To a point you made earlier about, I wondered how many teams might look sluggish or behind the curve coming out of this. I think for the most part, with maybe one or two exceptions, everybody looks pretty darn good right now, which is a little surprising, but in a good way.
Let's talk about what happened in the Avalanche Blues game last night. And have you ever seen any? What was your reaction to that? Because what an exciting finish in a playoff series. Is there anything better that could have happened in the start of hockey than that?
That was crazy, wasn't it? I mean, it was not only was it .01, it was like .00001 when the puck went in at the end of the game, and the Avalanche skate off with the win. It was tremendous, and it took the video replay and everything a while to figure it out. But I'll tell you what, when you look at those two teams, the Blues and the Avalanche, are probably two of the four best teams in this whole tournament. And they right away go head-to-head, and they provide you with a great game, an exciting game. And if you want to get into hockey and you watch those teams play and you think, man, that was a quality contest. That was great. There were chances in both ends, great saves, some goal scoring, physical play. That's what you're going to get this time of year. And you know what? The excitement of having it come down to the wire like that, that's something we rarely see, but it's so much fun to witness. I loved it. I thought it was a great finish to a great game.
Tom Callahan, our hockey guru, joining us on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline. Tom, the Penguins series with Montreal began on Saturday night, Montreal getting a victory in overtime. And, you know, when I saw this, a couple of things stuck out to me. Number one, we go back to a year ago, a little over a year ago, where Columbus had no business doing what they did to the Tampa Bay Lightning, but they swept Tampa Bay in a best-of-7 series and outplayed them in every way possible and stole that series. And the first game of the best-of-5 series between Pittsburgh and Montreal reminded me of the Columbus destruction of Tampa Bay, in that Columbus just slowed the game down, mucked the game up, if you will, and Tampa Bay was just not able to recover. I saw a lot of what Montreal did in game number one, where they just slowed the tempo down. They would not allow the Penguins to play to their strengths, and a lot of folks said, hey, Pittsburgh's going to sweep this series. It's not even going to be close. And now you're looking at Montreal with a 1-0 lead and an opportunity for a 2-0 lead tonight when they play again in Toronto. Could the unthinkable happen 2 straight years, Tom?
It's not unthinkable. And for number one, I'll tell you why. With Montreal, they have a goaltender in Carey Price who's an all-world goaltender. He is one of the top 5 still in the game when he's on his game. I love Carey Price, and I think he's a guy, especially in a short series, Ron, it can be stolen from you. But for the Penguins, it's not time to push the panic button yet. There's nothing wrong with the way Murray played. I don't think you need to switch goalies to go with Tristan Jarry. But Gino Malkin needs to be better. They do need to be a little bit better defensively. I felt like they just didn't have great shot opportunities, but Malkin looked not himself, especially after the year he had where he recommitted himself to really coming out and trying to be on top of his game. He didn't look good, and I think he needs to be good for them to be able to really turn it around in this series. So he's got to fire it up a little bit. And you know what? Again, credit, as you said, to Montreal, because they didn't let the Penguins play to their strengths. They didn't let them fly around. And that's what they're going to need to continue to do. And then you rely on your goaltender to make the saves, and he's capable of giving them those saves.
I know, obviously, the NHL Draft is to the reward of those that get bounced in the first round of the playoffs. So if the Penguins were to be upset by Montreal, there is a chance that Pittsburgh could get the top pick in the NHL Draft. And as if you're a Penguins fan, now you're kind of torn. Okay, if we lose to Montreal, there's a pretty good chance we get a difference maker if we're the top pick in the NHL Draft. And that person, along with Crosby, Malkin, etc., maybe we get a shot in the arm and another shot at a run before Crosby ultimately retires. Or you get past Montreal and hope and pray that Pittsburgh is able to play much, much better hockey and get that one last gasp for a Stanley Cup run. This is an interesting scenario now that the NHL has determined that the losers in the qualifying rounds are going to be picking toward the top.
Yeah, and so it's a 1 in 8 chance if you're eliminated here out of the best of 5 series that you'll end up with the top pick, because there's going to be 8 teams eliminated. That said, Ron, I mean, I wouldn't get too fired up about that until you're actually out, because here's the thing, the Penguins window, we've been talking, you and I, for the last couple of years about when's it going to close. Are their stars, especially Crosby's getting older, Malkin's getting older. They have some good young blood on that team, some guys who have come in, stepped up, played better. But really, look, it is a Crosby-Malkin team. Those guys are the drivers, and they need to continue to be. So the window is only going to be there for another couple of years, and they really need to make hay while the sun shines. Now, if they are bounced and they end up with the first pick, yeah, generally that first overall guy is pretty capable of stepping into an NHL lineup within that first year or two. So it would be a boon, but I think the Penguins are a better team than Montreal. I think they just need a little time to get it together, and they will.
I know that there's a lot of hockey left to play. It's so early, but so far, what's been your biggest surprise that you've seen?
Boy, there have been a couple teams that just really haven't shown up for me. Chicago beating Edmonton, I thought, was one of those. I was very surprised by. But Edmonton's goaltending, I've not had a lot of faith in from the get-go. So that was a little surprising. I don't know that Chicago has what it takes to pull the upset, but I do believe that that's a series to keep an eye on. Honestly, I was a little surprised by Montreal over Pittsburgh. That one was a little shocking as well. And the big question I had in the East was, would Philadelphia be able to come back to the form they displayed before the pause? Because they were one of the hottest teams in the NHL. They were playing lights out, and then you have to hit stop for 3 or 4 months. And I thought, oh, man, that's going to kill the Flyers. Well, then the Flyers came out and destroyed Boston 4-1 the other night. That was a bit of a surprise for me. I'm very interested to see if Philadelphia can keep that up. They look really good right now.
Tom, I also wanted to bring up the Columbus series with Toronto. How surprised were you that the Blue Jackets were able to handle the Maple Leafs with such ease?
Not very, and I know that a lot of Leaf fans will disagree with me on that one, but because they always think they should be better. And look, there's a lot of big guns on the Leafs, but for exactly the reasons, Ron, you talked about, where they shut down the Lightning, slowed everything down, and were able to get it done the other day against them. That's the reason why they're going to be able to get it done against the Leafs, is because they have the capability to shut that team down. And plus, you look at a guy like Seth Jones, top defender. He's back. He's healthy. He's 100%. This guy is going to be a huge difference. And that's why I think, you know what, if Jones is healthy and they get good goaltending, which they've, like many other teams, ended up with a 1A, 1B and their quality options, I see no reason why that doesn't continue.
Okay, we have a kid that grew up literally a stone throw away from our East Palestine studios, and that would be JT Miller, who has bounced around the league. He started with the New York Rangers, was traded to Tampa Bay. Unfortunately, their playoff run lasted 4 games last year. They were bounced by Columbus. JT Miller was then sent to Vancouver. Vancouver is in a best-of-5 series with Minnesota. Could Vancouver knock off Minnesota, and where are the Canucks if they get past Minnesota? Are they able to make a deep run in the Western Conference?
I like JT Miller a lot, and I was surprised Tampa let him go. I think he's a guy who is a heart and soul guy, and I think he's made the Canucks better. But the Canucks are only going to go as far as Jacob Markstrom takes them, and it's his goaltending that really gave Vancouver the season they had. And it was a good season. I thought they played well when he was on. Then he got hurt, and they fall out, and kind of hit at the right time for the Canucks. That said, I liked the Wild heading into the pause. I liked what they did at the trade deadline, and I think they're very capable. The question for me, so they went with Alex Stalock over Devin Dubnyk in net, which I think was important because I'm not a believer in Dubnyk. But Stalock also was a guy with vulnerabilities in his game. If the Canucks are patient, they might be able to get him to open up. If they get past, so let's just assume they get past the Wild, they're going to be reseeded. They'll probably end up with a mid-bracket draw. It's not going to be an easy road for them because the top 3 in the West are so formidable. I think at some point they run into a buzzsaw. Unless they match up with Dallas, which could always be possible due to reseeding. I think Dallas is very beatable. But outside of that, to beat Vegas, Colorado, or St. Louis is going to be a tall order. So maybe they get one series win if they get the 4 or 5 men, which I think Dallas is going to end up. But outside of that, it's tough. It's tough for me to say that they make a run just simply because I don't think they're deep enough.
Well, and we look at both of the conferences, that it seems to be 3 teams in each conference that are going to be head and shoulders above everyone else. And you spoke about St. Louis, Vegas, and Colorado in the West, and you got Philadelphia, Boston, and Tampa Bay in the East. Are there any teams not mentioned that could very well have a serious run in them and possibly upset a few apple carts and find themselves in a Stanley Cup championship?
I really thought Pittsburgh was going to be that team, to be honest with you. Out of all the teams that were in the elimination draw, the best of 5 rounds here as we come back, the Penguins, I don't know how they kept themselves afloat all season with the injuries they had, but they did. And I was very impressed by that. I was impressed not only by the coaching, but by the depth of the lineup, and just they really seemed to have it together. And I thought, well, if the Penguins come back and find their game, they can be that team. But one other team I'll give you, just because I think that's an easy-ish pick in the East, is the Carolina Hurricanes. I think the Hurricanes made a run last year. I think they learned a lot. I honestly think too many teams still take them lightly. I really like the way the Hurricanes look so far in the East, and I think they could be that surprise team for me if there's a possible run to be made.
Out of all the sports, do you think the NHL has the best chance to finish their season than any other sports out there?
Yes, I do, because they're already pretty much into their playoffs, and I think they're 1A and 1B with the NBA. The NBA is into its bubble, and as long as the players behave and they are able to limit the outside exposure, I think they'll be fine. I don't know that I would have picked Florida, but I get it. So I think, yes, they have the best chance to finish. And as Ron and I have talked about, I think Major League Baseball has the worst chance to finish.
Well, and I hate to give him credit because he's a doofus as a commissioner, but I'll give Rob Manfred all credit in the world. He flat out told the guys, look, if you're not going to be in a bubble, and the Players Association were the ones that said no to the bubble, Manfred told these guys, if you're not in the bubble, then you're going to have to mind your P's and Q's, and hopefully after the fiasco with the Marlins and the Cardinals, everyone is now going to realize we got to mind our P's and Q's. Otherwise, this season isn't even going to be played through because we're just going to assassinate our own season.
And that's it, Ron. It's in the players' hands. And if the players don't realize that, phooey on them. They really need to understand that beyond anything else, they control their season. And they need to realize that. I hope they do. They need to. But quite honestly, it seems simple, doesn't it, for you and I on the outside? We're sitting out here looking in going, boy, if only they do this, if only they do that. And yet, sometimes they just don't do it. And we shake our heads at them. But, it's hard to, even when they were trying to put things together, it's so hard to have that sympathy for the millionaire versus billionaire setup, or even like for the athletes, or when we hear of celebrities going, oh, I'm contained in my 7,000 square foot mansion or whatever it is. Feels bad for you. Fans just want the sport to be played, and they expect you to behave. And
the National Football League. I'm sorry, Tom. We had lost you there for a second. The National Football League will, in all likelihood, begin their season the same way of Major League Baseball, where they'll have their bubble during the week where everyone is going to, go about their business. And then obviously on a weekly basis, when they're home, they don't have to travel. Obviously, when they go to the road, they're going to go to the hotel on Saturday or Friday, depending on which time zone they're in, and then get acclimated to the different time zone and get ready to go. Has the National Football League, in your mind, do you think that they're looking at Major League Baseball and saying, okay, we're in a similar situation where we don't have a complete bubble because it would be impossible to have football played in a bubble, considering 15 games one day? No way you'd be able to do it in one city. You'd have to do it in about probably 7 different cities if you wanted to have the National Football League played the way it's normally played. Do you think that the National Football League is looking at Major League Baseball and saying, okay, we're taking mental notes, this is how we're going to have to go about this in order to make sure that we're not having the same mistakes?
I think if the NFL could find a multiple bubble model where teams play through, and if you needed to, I guess you could switch bubbles with a bye week in between if you shorten the schedule. Because once you put 4 or 5 teams in a bubble, or however many you want to, I mean, divide the teams any way you want, even if you put 8 together in 4 different bubbles, then everybody can play everybody once, and that's 7 weeks worth of games. And then maybe, you do something again after that, or shortening the season. But I'll be honest with you, Ron, if there's travel involved, and look, I've traveled with sports teams my entire career. If there's travel involved, people are going to get sick. And it might not be COVID-19. It might be a flu bug. It might be something else. But teams get sick when they travel. It's law. I would not trust any amount. That's why I'm so busy, because there's no travel and expect everyone to be healthy for the duration of the season.
Yeah, Tom, we lost you, but the point being made, you and I have traveled for years and years and years via a bus or whatever other transportation, and it may not be COVID-19, but once you have a flu bug, it goes through the system pretty quickly.
It does. It goes through the whole team. And Ron, you and I have heard the phrase several times, and maybe fans have. We call it the Germ Tube, whether it's a bus or a plane. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and again, unless you're completely in a bubble, let's not. You're just not going to be able to get away with that. Now, obviously, when in Major League Baseball, if you're going to be on the road, stay in your hotel. You can stay in the lobby, stay in your hotel room, order room service. For the love of God and everything that's holy, don't go to a casino or don't go to a strip club.
Right. But now you've got to rely on everybody to, as I say, do their job. This is what you're being paid to do, is your job as a professional athlete. There are certain sacrifices you make to do that job.
Hey, Tom, before we let you go, a couple of other things. The television standpoint of things, what are the ratings, or what have the ratings been like? Has there been an uptick on the ratings as far as you know?
You know what? Right now, I haven't seen any of the early returns on the books yet. I don't even know if the NHL has put them out for this first week yet. But I have to imagine, Ron, they're going to be higher, because people are still cooped up. People are still starved for sports. One thing is with the Olympics being postponed, what NBC has now done is it's able to fan all the games across its family of networks, much like it does with the Olympics. So that is going to help their exposure, although, again, you have to be a cable subscriber for most of this. But, I think they did it right by putting Eastern teams in the East, Western teams in the West. It allows you primetime matchups and the teams that you need to play in prime time. I'm sure, especially in Canada, the ratings will probably be even higher this weekend, because the Blue Jays, as we know, didn't play for 4 days because of what's going on in Philadelphia. That's where they were supposed to be playing. So I think that they are primed for success.
Well, and obviously the other thing is you're going to see a lot of upsets in a best of 5 rather than a best of 7. You will see some upsets, and the fact that you don't have home ice advantage, that it doesn't matter where you're seated. You're going to be in one neutralized location, so the seedings really don't mean all that much, because you're not going to be going to a road game per se. Both teams are going to be on a road. It's a neutral site. So home ice, there is no such thing, and that's one of the things that is making this playoff system so interesting to look at, because I think there will be plenty of upsets in the postseason.
I think it's ripe for that as well. And, for those people who are like, well, Edmonton on its home ice and Toronto on its home ice is an unfair advantage, guess what? Both of those teams lost their opening games. So, yeah, you know what, call it what you will, but, I mean, the rink is the same. It's like the movie Hoosiers, where, Gene Hackman goes in and measures the court and shows them that, hey, it doesn't matter if we're playing in this giant field house or we're playing in our high school gym, the court is the same. And the rink is the same. And so you go out there and you play hard and you play better than the other team, you're going to win.
Carolina's already beaten the Rangers today 4-1 because there's 3 games going on in Toronto. So Carolina's taken a 2-0 series lead on the Rangers, and they have the Rangers on the brink of elimination.
Not a huge surprise, especially because Shesterkin couldn't start, and we're not entirely sure why, but he's hurt. He must be physically hurt, because if he was, and it's all the same terminology right now in the NHL, the unfit to play. But if he was sick, he wouldn't be at the rink watching games, but he is. So that's an injury situation. The Rangers, they're still not there yet, and they need to trade Henrik Lundqvist's contract and get out from under that. So it hurts them that they didn't have arguably their best goaltender even in the lineup. And Carolina, as I said, I really like them. They've been good, but I think you're going to see the other thing, Ron, is as we get into the playoffs, we will separate the wheat from the chaff. You're going to see the good teams be able to pull themselves ahead. Because here's the other thing, too. Remember how we talk about travel fatigue in a normal series when teams, especially if it's a crazy bi-coastal series, heaven forbid it's, New York City against Los Angeles in the final or something weird like that. Or we have Boston, Vancouver. The travel for that was insane several years ago. We don't have that now. There is no travel. Your travel is walking to and from the arena. So I'm pretty, excited about what we could see out of all this, because teams are as rested as they're ever going to be. They're as healthy as they're ever going to be, and there will be no fatigue from the travel and the other things.
Has the NHL announced where the Stanley Cup championships are going to be played?
Yes, they'll be played in Edmonton.
Toronto screwed again. Tom, always a pleasure, sir.
All right, Ron, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You got it, man. Our NHL guru, Tom Callahan, joining us on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline.